Okay, it's about time that someone addressed the situation which to me is blindingly obvious, but which apparently has got so many people drinking the Kool-Aid. And that is the situation where it seems like there is this whole campaign to gaslight Malehya and make out Daniel to be the hero. Now, I'm not defending either of these, because clearly they both know what happened here, and they've both lied. Whether Malehya has since come clean and spoken to investigators, who knows? But their stories, while there were inconsistencies, their stories were almost the same at the beginning, meaning that they concocted a narrative together at the beginning of all this. People seem to keep forgetting that one simple fact. They keep disregarding this and instead jumping on the bandwagon, acting like sheep, and following all the ridiculous rumours that are going out there and allowing themselves to be manipulated by the narrative. So I'm going to address this in this video because I think a lot of people just aren't aware of how extensive this is. And honestly, my concern here is, regardless of what Malehya may or may not have done, what I see when I look at this woman is a quietly spoken individual, someone who, according to Belinda Gray, was the perfect mother, dearly loved her children, and who, according to Belinda Gray, would never harm her children. Things changed for Malehya after she hooked up with Daniel. Her relationship with Daniel was the catalyst that led to these children disappearing. And yet people want to lay all the blame on Malehya. And here's the thing. Now, I'm not going to share the videos that exist of her when she's 14, when she was 16. I see no need to do so. I'm not after exclusive video rights. Because like I said, what I saw in those videos was a slightly naive, quietly spoken young lady who I suspect probably wasn't the dominant one in the relationship between her and Daniel. And right now what I'm seeing is an imbalance of power. Malehya has made the decision not to speak out publicly. Now, you can go at it however you like. But honestly, with the kind of circus that's going on, my advice to her would be to stay quiet and not bother engaging in any of this. Because while she's being quiet and not able to speak up for herself, what we're seeing is escalation in public attacks on her, on just her. Public attacks which raise Daniel Martel up on some kind of pedestal and paint Malehya as the sole perpetrator in all this. And I can't imagine what that would be doing for her mental health. But of course, here's the thing. with the level of gaslighting that's going on, if Malehya came out and tried to stand up for herself, it wouldn't make a difference. People would still gaslight her. People would still put Daniel up on a pedestal, and they would twist anything she said to the point where she would still be the villain in all this. Now, like I said, I'm not giving her a free pass. I'm not giving Daniel a free pass. They both gave contradictory stories to authorities when these children went missing. They both lied. They both concocted a narrative together. And yet, something happened between Malehya's family and Daniel's family that basically led to Malehya fleeing with Meadow. And since then, it's all been about Malehya being the villain and Daniel being the hero. And the way I see it is that she has been gaslit ever since the moment when she left that property. And here's the thing. If we want justice for these children, and I'm going to word it that way, because whatever happened to these children, I don't believe they were put in a car and are hidden on a reserve or any of this sort of crap. It makes no sense. I believe these children are deceased. I trust the instincts of their grandmother, Belinda Gray, when she says that in her heart she feels that the children are no longer alive. It doesn't matter that they've not been in her life for the last 18 months. That's not her fault. That doesn't stop her from loving those children and from feeling that connection to the children. They are her own flesh and blood. So what if her son is a dropkick? So what if he's not had anything to do with the children for 3 years? He dropped the ball there well and truly. That's not her fault. She doesn't make excuses for him. She admits that he's a disappointment, essentially. But here's the thing. If I'm correct and these children are deceased, and we are seeking justice for these children, well, these YouTube channels, these keyboard warriors on Facebook, these people acting on behalf of Daniel, and I believe that is the case, continue to target Malehya, then she may not be around when the time comes for justice to be served. If we look at this from one angle, what if she had nothing to do with what happened to her children, but she knows what happened? She witnessed what happened and she allowed what happened. Well, she would be going through hell right now. Guilt, anger, loss, all those feelings. And then people add to that with this gaslighting, painting her out as being the sole villain in this situation. This is a woman who, like I said, appears to be quietly spoken, perhaps a little bit naive, perhaps a little dreamy. Someone who could potentially be pushed beyond their limits to the point where they make a decision about their own existence. We need her around to testify when it comes to a trial for these children, regardless of her involvement, because she definitely knows what happened, if not was involved. without her testimony, it's going to be harder to get justice for these children. And yet we have all these people pushing and pushing. And I believe a lot of it is coming from one source, and that is Daniel and his family. So let's talk about that. Now, I'm going to share a post that I saw on Facebook today. And I could almost respect this guy if not for the fact that he has basically said that there are no YouTubers that are reputable in terms of sources of news for this case, because I take that as a personal insult, and I also am offended on behalf of some of the really good channels that are covering this. But that said, those of us who are trying to do the right thing are being drowned out by the clickbaiters, by the people who are in it for the drama, by the people who are in it to push the Daniel narrative. So chances are that he doesn't see channels like mine, because we are marginalised. We are pushed into a corner, and YouTube promotes the channels that are there with the clickbait, the channels that have got the drama, because they're the ones getting the views. But I'm going to read what he said anyway, because most of it does hold true. Public service announcement. Clickbait YouTube videos are not news. Stop sharing random nonsense for attention. It's like we get rid of one Kimberly Emerson and 7 more come out to fill the void she left. He's referring to someone who has been posting flat out on Facebook, sharing so many rumours, sharing so many pro-Daniel things. She's been blocked, and now there's suddenly all these new accounts who are posting like mad. And of course you've got all the anonymous individuals. Why is it so hard for people to stop abusing this story? There are none, zero, nada YouTubers that are reputable sources of news regarding this. Like I said, that gets me kind of ticked off, but chances are he's not seeing reputable ones, because when I sat there this morning and I scrolled through everything that was on YouTube and TikTok about this case, everything that came up was clickbait and drama. Why this BS keeps getting shared is beyond me. The stories some of you believe are effing ridiculous, and I agree with him there. Like the girl who said she saw on the news that Jack and Lily were deceased and can respond to every single person calling her a liar, but cannot respond to anyone asking her, what news did you hear it on? Like it wouldn't be the biggest news story on television right now. It's not on the news. It's BS, attention seeking. And don't even get me started on these clowns who believe the Durwood nonsense. Grow the F up, people. JC. I think he's got some valid points there. And I think he sums up what a lot of sane, rational people are feeling right now. So let's have a look at some of the things that popped up when I went and had a look this morning on YouTube. And I should add, these are also the videos that are being shared on the Facebook posts. There's, I think, 3 different pages for Jack and Lily. And the videos that you only ever see this kind of crap being shared on there. They don't share decent videos. One of the things that stands out to me is the use of AI versions of Malehya and Daniel that don't even really look like them. So if you look on the top left-hand corner, I don't even know what Crimecast it is. It's probably one of those clickbait AI channels. And I haven't got the full title there because I wasn't going to click on it to find out. But it doesn't even look like Malehya. They've used AI to try and come up with an image of her that doesn't even look like her. And then you have in the middle there some tosser. She didn't deny it. Again, manipulated images. And then, of course, the good old dolly vision on the right-hand side. Again, AI manipulated image of Daniel Martel. And he's got the heading, "The Worst Mother Ever." Again, down the bottom corner. At least this time, whoever did this one appears to have used regular images, possibly. And their title there is, "Malehya will crack soon," says Lily and Jack Sullivan's stepdad. And I will address that. Then we have this one in the middle. Another clickbait one. "They went to New Brunswick." And good old Joseph Morris on the far-hand side. "Major break. Bombshell. Lily and Jack's mother put them in a vehicle and on the run." And I think, honestly, Joseph Morris and Daniel Martel are probably neck and neck in terms of misinformation on this case, if you ask me. And then down the bottom, the latest one, which is just a post from Facebook. Anonymous member, of course, it's always an anonymous member that breaks these things. "The mother was on Snapchat on the beach with a friend today. Over my dead body, would I be getting on with my life?" I've done a YouTube short and a TikTok about these claims about Malehya on the beach, but I am going to address them in this video also. Notice every single one of these titles is an attack on Malehya. There's no videos here that attack Daniel. Anytime we get mention of Daniel, he's a hero. And you just have to look at this dolly vision image on the top right-hand corner. Like I said, AI manipulated to make it look like Daniel is crying. Trust me, I've watched all the footage. He never pulled a face like that. So, first up, I'm going to address the photos that have been posted on Facebook of Malehya and her friend, and the photo of Daniel with Meadow. Because at the moment, these are the hot topics. And then I'm going to work back over other things, as well as looking at all the statements made by Daniel Martel in interviews that are designed to gaslight Malehya. But first of all, let's talk about this claim of Malehya being on the beach with a friend. Now, I bet you can't guess where this originates from.
Jack and Lily's mother, Malehya Brooks Murray, was caught on Snapchat at the beach. Jill Moore wrote, quote, "Nothing towards my cousin, but could you imagine your kids missing and instead of helping and doing everything in your power to find them, you're on the beach happy as a clam?"
Yes, of course. It came from Joseph Morris. Now, it's possible that it could have originated from someone connected to Daniel. But like I said, it seems like Joseph Morris and Daniel Martel are neck and neck for doing their best to discredit Malehya. But it is so not surprising that it is once again Joseph Morris behind this. And of course, while, like I said, it may have, the original post, may have come from someone on Daniel's side of the family, but those comments, I've not seen them anywhere other than Joseph Morris. They have been shared on Facebook, and I'm going to share the name of the poster. Normally I block them out, but clearly this person is enjoying being part of the drama, sharing the screenshots of, or the apparent screenshots of this conversation. So I am going to say that this Cheryl Christine E or whatever is actually a friend of Malehya's. Now, if she posted this on Instagram, then she's a pretty scummy friend, and I said that in my YouTube short and TikTok video that I made. But I wonder if she did, or if this is all a big hoax created by someone using a real photograph that someone has then either scanned or taken a photo of and shared. So I'm going to start by showing you a closer version of this photo. And I just want to point out the fact that the person originally sharing this was Joseph Morris, and yet now there is a clean version of the photo that's being posted all over the place that doesn't have like obvious signs of being screenshot from a Joseph Morris video, which to me suggests that either someone provided this to Joseph Morris or Joseph Morris came up with it on his own. If you're wondering why I distrust this guy so much, you might want to go back through my playlist and you'll see the sort of things that Joseph Morris has been up to. The things that should have him banned from social media platforms. If you were following the Idaho 4 case, before that turned into a complete utter circus, you probably know what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's start by addressing the picture quality. This is not a digital photo. This is a digital photograph of a paper photo. You can see all the imperfections in the paper. This photo's probably been sitting on a pinboard somewhere for the past 10 years. It's got all these white bits on it that show deterioration of a photo. Not only that, you can just tell by the quality of the image that this is not a digital photo. So if it was posted yesterday or the day before, whenever it was, on Snapchat by this Cheryl person, then it was done intentionally to make Malehya look bad, and I hope that Malehya never speaks to her again, if that is indeed the case. However, if this is something that someone has gotten hold of and created a post from, then I apologise to her that she's been taken advantage of. Now, like I said, I know she's a friend of Malehya's. I've looked at her Facebook account. I've also done a bit of digging, found the connections, and I also heard her on some little channel, I can't even remember the name of it, where she went on several nights ago and spoke for a little while, trying to stand up for Malehya. The host of the channel was incredibly rude to her and was more interested in hearing from this Logan person, and basically told this Cheryl, well, I don't know who you are, so I'm going to give this Logan priority, pretty much. Now, like I said, at this point in time, the origins of this photo seem to be Joseph Morris. So this may not be connected with Daniel in any way, or it could simply be because it has been normalised now for people to go after Malehya Brooks Murray. Because apparently she's the whipping boy here, Daniel's the golden boy. People don't want to see that they are jointly responsible. Okay, I'm going to address Malehya first. Straight up, you can see the photo on the left. She's actually quite a bit younger there. If you can't see that, I'm sorry for your inability to do so. But let's just forget about the age part of it. And let's have a closer look. The easiest way to see what I'm talking about here is to examine the chin line. The photo on the left-hand side, that shows Malehya significantly lighter than what she is in the photo on the right-hand side. Let's forget the fact that in this photo on the left-hand side, she looks like she's maybe 19 or 20, whereas the photo on the right-hand side, she looks like she has that adult spread that occurs with females when you get into your mid-20s. Because Malehya would now be around 26. And it shows. And nobody loses that much weight in an 8-week period of time. And if they do, they're certainly not going to be glowing and have that healthy looking radiant skin that we see in this photo on the left hand side. As for getting a suntan, well, from all accounts, Malehya has been inside for the last 8 weeks, hiding out. And honestly, to get that level of suntan in an 8-week period of time with skin like Malehya's, not a chance. Her skin is that classic Irish skin that tends to burn more before it gets a tan. She would have needed to have spent the entire summer out in the sunshine to get a tan like that. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the tan on the left-hand side is a spray tan. Which, given that she's supposedly hiding out, can't see that happening either. No matter how you look at it, there's no way this photo on the left-hand side is a recent photo of Malehya. Now, for those of you who want to argue filters or something like that, let's have a look at her friend Cheryl. Again, she's considerably younger in the photo on the left-hand side, just for starters. Skin tone, so much paler on the right-hand side. And yes, this is a recent photo of her that was taken in either April or May, and I've forgotten already. Notice again the change of face shape, because clearly the photo on the left-hand side, she looked like she was about 19. She's now got that more adult shape to her face. I'm guessing she's probably in her mid-20s, like Malehya. I don't think I really need to talk about this photo much more, because if you can't see it by now, then I can't help you. But it seems pretty clear to me that this photo is nothing but a hoax designed to stir up more hatred for Malehya. Again, the number one target here is Malehya. Now, since we are looking at these photos, let's address this photo of Daniel holding Meadow. And I refuse to put images of Meadow on my channel here because she's only 19 months old and she's got nothing to do with this case. And I strongly disagree with having her image posted all over the internet. Now, Daniel mentioned in a recent interview that he had a visitation lined up, a supervised visitation with Meadow. So it is quite possible that that is where this photo comes from, and that he's gone and got a fancy hair, well, not fancy, but gone and got a haircut, tidied himself up a bit, because obviously you want to create a good impression with CPS. Of course, it's also just as possible that this photo could have been taken prior to Jack and Lily going missing. And I think when it comes to these sort of things, we do have to have that critical outlook, that logical outlook. Make sure that we're not just being hoodwinked and believing straight out what we're being told or what we're being shown. I don't think it's hugely relevant here. What I think is relevant here is that this is yet another attempt to manipulate a public audience. This little girl is 19 months old. This is the first time Daniel has had a profile image on his Facebook account that has included any of his children. What does that tell you? This is all about the image. He's not concerned about his daughter's face being shown all over the internet. What he wants people to see here is him being the loving father. This is no different from a politician kissing babies. This is PR. Don't be fooled, people. I'm sure he does love his daughter. But this image is there to control the narrative, to manipulate what people think of Daniel. This is another attempt at showing people he's the hero because he cares about his kids. But here's the thing. At the same time, you know what this does? This completely blows this Dillwood, whatever his name is, story out of the water. Because according to him, Malehya loaded the kids into someone's car, and she's since done a runner with baby Meadow. Well, that story has now evolved to apparently there was a CPS hearing this week sometime. So apparently she never did a runner. And now we have this photo of Daniel with Meadow, which also proves, if it is a current photo, that Malehya never did a runner. And it basically completely blows Durwood's story out of the water. This photo acts as a cautionary tale. Be careful what you believe when you are being told these things. Like I said, this photo could have been taken before the children went missing, and his hair's grown out since then. Or it could have been taken while he was having his visit with Meadow, and he's just gone and got himself a haircut and tidied himself up a bit. But that's not the point. The point is, this is a PR stunt. The other side of this is, this well and truly blows the Malehya running off with Meadow, Malehya hiding the children story out of the water. Because here's the thing. If she was really hiding her children, do you think she would have let this go on for 8 weeks? Seems highly doubtful. So I'm going to address the stories that have been put out both on Facebook and on TikTok and on YouTube. Because it seems like from the day that Malehya left the property with Meadow, that the focus has been on her, and people have completely forgotten that Daniel has to have a role in this. If Malehya has a role in this, because they have lied about it together. We started with so many people pushing that how dare she leave the property with her children still missing. This was pushed hard both on Facebook and on YouTube. And of course, many of the people who were pushing it on Facebook were doing so anonymously. The whole time that people were pushing the whole notion of Malehya being the most horrible person here because she left while her children were missing, all of a sudden the focus was off Daniel. He was a hero because he was still searching, according to him. All these things that are being pushed out there to show that Daniel is such a virtuous person are things that have been pushed out there by Daniel himself and not confirmed by anybody. And the thing is, there are contradictions. So Daniel pushed this whole thing of, well, I offered them my phone really early on. And then in another interview, he actually slips up and says that they confiscated their phones, his and Malehya's, because he was trying to gaslight Malehya and didn't realise that at the same time he was proving his own story to be a lie. And he's done this a few times where he's tried to gaslight Malehya and contradicted his previous stories. And it didn't take long before people were pushing, well, hey, see, Daniel can't have done the wrong thing. He's the one that stayed and searched for the children. He's the one that offered to do a polygraph. He's the one that offered up his phone. Malehya, well, she's run away and she's gone quiet. Was briefly mentioned by a few people and quickly shut down. The fact that Malehya was pretty much forced off that property. She was living on a property where you had Daniel his mother, and quite possibly also his brother. Based on things that have been said by Belinda Gray, it appears that his brother may be going through a divorce and may have been staying with the mother after all. If there is tension, given that Malehya doesn't come across as a overly confident person, there's no way she would have felt confident staying on that property, surrounded by Daniel and his family, if there was animosity, and it sounds like there was. But people have chosen to ignore that, or whenever it gets brought up, people go straight back to but she left the property when her kids were missing. And my answer to that is that, first of all, to me, that suggests that she knows the children aren't alive. She knew they weren't going to be found in the woods. But the other takeaway for me with that is that the Mounties weren't allowing people out into the woods to search. So her staying there with Meadow wasn't serving any purpose. If the kids had wandered off into the woods and were found by the Mounties, then given that it was the Saturday afternoon by the time Malehya left, then you would expect that even if those kids had been found alive, they would have been taken to an emergency room to be checked out. Meaning that it wouldn't have mattered whether Malehya was on the property or at her mother's house. But once again, like I said, I believe she knew that those children weren't in the woods, or at least not in the woods alive, and that's why she left. Because I cannot see why she would choose to leave otherwise. But at the same time, I also recognise how hard it would be to stay in that location when you have at least 3 people there who don't like you and are going to make it really hard for you to stay. But any time somebody started to question the validity of the things that were being said by Daniel, anytime people started to question Daniel's involvement, suddenly the narrative was being pushed again. Don't look at Daniel, look at Malehya. She walked away. She left her children behind. Daniel's the one searching. Well, I'd like to hear confirmation from the actual search teams that were there that Daniel was out searching after those children went missing. Not just Daniel saying it himself, because I really don't trust a word that he says. Now, tied in with Malehya leaving the property is her silence. And again, people have pointed out, well, look at Daniel, he's the one doing all the interviews. He's the one coming forward and speaking up on behalf of the children, while Malehya's staying silent. Even Malehya's mother is staying silent. Her quote to the media was that they were advised not to discuss the case, and that's the path they chose. The moment people try to point out the lies and inconsistencies in the many interviews that Daniel has done, once again the focus is flipped back onto Malehya. Look at Malehya, she hasn't spoken at all. She left and she stayed silent. She's the guilty person we need to look at, not Daniel. And I truly believe, based on the way things are headed with various YouTube channels, that Daniel and various family members of his are flooding Facebook and YouTube comments trying to basically gaslight Malaya and push the pro-Daniel narrative. And we have pro-Daniel channels that are popping up. And all these people who are pushing Daniel being the hero and Malaya being the villain here very carefully choose to ignore all Daniel's lies and inconsistencies. So we had the story from Daniel at one point in time where he very carefully managed to avoid mentioning that Meadow was still in Malaya's custody. And he spoke about him contacting CPS to try and get access to Meadow. And people ran with that, and nobody corrected them. They ran with that, and they believed that that meant that CPS had Meadow. And in fact, people came forward and so very confidently said, yes, CPS now have custody of Meadow, she's in foster care. And as soon as Daniel himself gave away the fact that Malaya did have Meadow, when he mentioned, oh, well, you know, can we take the focus off Malaya because... And he made implications there. He tried to suggest there were issues with Malaya's mental health. And he said, and that's going to impact on Meadow. So as soon as people pointed out what happened there, pointed out that Daniel had basically admitted the truth and that Meadow wasn't in care, suddenly we get this Durwood, Darren, Dilbert, whatever, coming forward with this new sensational story of Daniel's mother catching Malaya handing the kids off to somebody in a car. And that Malaya's done a runner now with Meadow. Well, that story kind of fell flat too. Because then Daniel mentioned that he had a supervised visit coming up with Meadow. So this whole story of Malaya doing a runner with Meadow after handing her children over to somebody got shot down. And yet people are still pushing Durwood's story of Malaya handing the children over to somebody in a car, which is the most nonsensical, ridiculous story I've ever heard. But because it supports Daniel and it still gaslights Malaya, people are still running with it. You have this guy coming forward and he's claiming to be a relative of Malaya and claiming that that makes him an expert. But here's the problems I have with this guy from the beginning. First of all, he comes forward calling himself Durwood O'Grady or something. And then it comes out that actually his name is Darren Geddes. And the thing is, when you look up both of them on Facebook, and you can tell it's the same person, and I should explain that, you can tell it is the same person because even though they've only got a handful of friends on their friend list, both of them have pretty much the same list of friends. Now, here's the thing. People are claiming that this Darren or Durwood or Dingbat or whatever is from the Pictou area. But when you look at the friend list of this Darren or Durwood guy, none of his friends are actually from the Pictou area. And of course, let's talk about the photo of this guy. The only photo in existence online comes from Joseph Morris, which straight up sends up red flags for me because I don't trust anything from Joseph Morris. He is the least credible creator on YouTube. He's a scammer. He's a clickbaiter. He shouldn't even be on social media. So we have this dingbat who's calling in to some crime, I can't even remember her name, criming something channel, who's saying he's Malehya's cousin. And yet everyone claims he lives in the Pictou area. There's no connections on his Facebook account to the Pictou area. And his story favours Daniel. Well, that one's got legs, hasn't it? Now, there were text messages that occurred between Belinda Gray and Malehya, apparently. And in those text messages, Belinda Gray apparently makes mention of Malehya's cousin Daniel. And people are saying, well, there you go, that is evidence now that he's real, because Belinda Gray made mention of it in a text message. Well, that's well and good, but someone could tell me that my cousin's wife has a cousin called Betty, and that this Betty had said something about my cousin's wife's daughter. Now, I don't know for certain that, I'll just call her my cousin because that's what I normally do. I don't know for certain that my cousin has a cousin called Betty. But if I'm sending her a text message, I don't want to sound like a noodle and say, this person who alleges they're your cousin, Betty. So I would probably just say, your cousin Betty told me this. Now she can choose to correct me, or if there's more things in the conversation, she may focus on them and just ignore the comment about this fantasy person, Betty. We don't see any confirmation in these supposed texts that Dingbat is actually her mother's or her grandmother's cousin, and that changes too. The story changes. So there is no confirmation that this Dingbat, who lives in Pictou County, has no friends on his Facebook account connected to Pictou County, has no friends on his Facebook account like Cindy Murray or Malehya Brooks Murray. There's nothing that confirms that he is who he claims that he is. He apparently mentioned that his son works with Daniel. And if you believe the evolving story, his son was also the person who saw Daniel and Malehya and the children the day they went missing. So the story just gets longer and longer with this Dingbat guy. And apparently he keeps going on this criming channel just to make sure people remember that he's around and just to back up his story a little bit more. And yet nobody seems to be questioning how come this guy who's supposed to be related to Malehya is coming out spreading stories about her, making her look like the bad person. How come, if he's supposedly related to Malehya, he happens to live in the area where Daniel's family live, not in the area where Malehya's family live? How come the only photo of him that we can find comes from Joseph Morris? How come he had to come forward with a fake name first? How do we even know that the second name that he gave is a real name? Sure, there's a bunch of Gettys in the Pictou area, apparently. Well, how do we know that he's connected to them? Because on his friends list, none of them come from the Pictou area. It seems to me that this is just someone with a connection to Daniel who has come forward to help with the story of Malehya being the bad person in this situation. Let's talk about more people connected to Daniel. Someone called Logan. Now, it turns out this Logan is a woman. I thought Logan was a guy's name, but who knows? We have this Logan coming forward, who is apparently a cousin of Daniel. And supposedly this Logan has applied for custody of the children because apparently Malehya and Daniel aren't allowed to keep Meadow. Well, again, this just sounds like someone putting out a story, trying to push against Malehya, trying to gaslight Malehya, trying to make it look like Daniel's family are the good family. They wouldn't have had anything to do with the disappearance of these children. Let's all tar and feather Malehya. And of course, every time one of these new characters pops up, there's always half a dozen or more accounts on Facebook who want to jump up and down and say, they're legitimate, they're real. Back Daniel, because he's a hero. So there's this overlap where we have all this crap going on YouTube with these new players popping up and multiple accounts on Facebook that are there to perpetuate the story. And I can't help thinking that these multiple accounts on Facebook belong to people like Daniel's brother. I believe he may have a sister. Daniel's mother. Other people around Daniel. It seems like Daniel has a little group, a little posse around him, whose sole goal is to try and make Daniel look innocent, while at the same time making Malehya look as bad as they possibly can make her look. Meanwhile, the only two real accounts that I can see that have any connection with this case that exist on Facebook are Belinda Gray and her daughter. And their main focus is about finding Lily and Jack, not about gaslighting Malehya or putting Daniel up on a pedestal. But what I have noticed is that this one channel, this criming whatever channel, is now exploiting Belinda Gray, having her go up on her live streams frequently, but in such a way that she's basically twisting things that Belinda says in favour of Daniel, because this criming whatever channel is a pro-Daniel channel. So she's actually using the children's grandmother, who basically was prevented from seeing her grandchildren, as far as I can tell, by Daniel. And yet she's using this woman as part of her pro-Daniel campaign. And I don't think Belinda Gray has realised the way she is being subtly used. But she certainly is. This woman with the channel pushing the whole, well, Malehya's changed, as per Belinda Gray. And this woman is using that to prove that it's all about Malehya, ignoring the possibility that, well, hang on, the link here is Daniel. Because once Malehya started seeing Daniel, Belinda saw less and less of her grandchildren, to the point where after Meadow was born, she didn't see them again. And I've noticed that anything that Belinda says about when she went to the house to help search is being twisted by this criming woman to be pro-Daniel. Now, I've only listened partway through one of her lives where she had Belinda on, because I don't want to waste 5.5 hours of my time on a live stream that's just waffling on and is basically pushing one narrative to the point where where this guest is involved, she's twisting what this guest is saying. But the thing is, the thing that surprises me, things that Belinda said on this channel suggest to me that she is a very astute woman. And I think she's got a pretty good idea of what the reality is. And yet anytime she tries to say this criming woman takes over and turns the narrative back towards Daniel. But this Belinda keeps going back. So I'm wondering if we've misjudged this woman. Could she be in this just for her 15 minutes of fame? I mean, we can see that she cares dearly about the children, but maybe she believes that by going on this channel and helping this woman to gaslight Malehya and put Daniel up on a pedestal, maybe in her head that's still getting the story out for the children, even if it's getting the wrong story out. Or maybe she just doesn't know what to believe anymore because of all the stories that are being put out there. Because a part of you, even though you knew it was untrue, would want to believe anything that suggested your grandchildren maybe could still be alive. And I've noticed when I listened to that interview that this criming woman was pushing these hearsay stories onto Belinda as if they were truthful, as if they were real. So, I don't know, maybe this woman is just too polite, maybe Belinda is too polite to say, if you stop exploiting me, I'm not coming on your channel anymore. Maybe she believes this is how people are going to find Jack and Lily, by her allowing herself to be exploited. Or maybe it is just a case of her enjoying her 15 minutes of fame. But I find it really disturbing that people are manipulating information from the children's grandmother in favour of Daniel. And the biggest problem here in terms of people gaslighting Malehya and putting Daniel up on pedestal is the people who are doing it so confidently that other people become confused and think, well, they're talking about it like it's factual, so it must be factual. And they're not questioning the source of the information. They're not questioning the person who's putting out the information in the first place. They're just running with it. And like I said, I am convinced that there's probably a bunch of Daniel's family members who are perpetuating this on Facebook with anonymous accounts, with fake accounts, fake names. I have no doubt that this dingbat guy is actually someone closely associated with Daniel who's gone, hey, let's do this, and this will help make you look good and make Malehya look bad. Why anyone would trust someone who comes forward under a fake name and then suddenly has a different name and actually claims to be related to the person that they are working so hard to discredit, I don't know. Now, I'm just going to finish off with looking at the clips of Daniel's interviews where he is subtly, or not so subtly, gaslighting Malehya. Although the first clip I'm going to play still connects with the gaslighting Malehya, but in a this came first kind of way. So you've probably saw one of the titles that I showed you at the beginning of this video, where they claimed Malehya's gone to New Brunswick with the children, which we now know is complete utter BS. But I wanted to show you where this notion of her running off to New Brunswick with the children originally comes from. I'll also point out that the clips that I'm showing still have Phoebe's butterfly on them. You will notice Phoebe's butterfly is not on today's video. Phoebe was finally laid to rest yesterday, and I will do a video about that after I finish making this one.
Post any officers they can get at the New Brunswick border, PI border, and get them at every airport possible.
So you'll note that the first place that he mentioned that he thought they should be locking down was the New Brunswick border. Now, this doesn't show that the story came from Daniel directly. It could be the story came directly from Joseph Morris, who watched this clip. But usually with these stories, these fake stories that come up, you can always find a little piece of their origin by going back through previous interviews, back through factual information, and you can find where these stories begin.
Why do you think you need to do that? Do you think they don't believe you?
I think their side of the family doesn't believe me, and I just want to clear it up for everyone. Clear it up for everyone, not just the people online making crazy accusations.
So what you got in the very early interviews were subtle digs at Malehya's family from Daniel, and subtle attempts to put himself up as a hero. Well, Malehya's family doesn't believe me, but I am a good person. Look at me. I am so innocent that I've asked to do a polygraph test. And I brought up Malehya's family specifically to make sure that you remember that there's two people in this situation, and to make sure that you focus over on Malehya, because it's her family making the accusations against me when I'm innocent. It's subtle, but the goal here is to basically vilify Malehya and her family. They're blaming him, but hey, he's innocent, so look at them, they're the bad guys. It is the beginning of the push to vilify Malehya. And people didn't notice that they were being manipulated. They allowed themselves to be manipulated. And the manipulation continued.
Despite not having had contact with the children's mother, Malehya, since May 3rd when she left the search area, he says an RCMP liaison has been assigned to keep them both informed as the investigation progresses.
Trust the RCMP word, and I mean, you don't have to trust my word, but I'm the only one doing media for Jack and Lily, trying to keep the story alive and get them found.
So in this interview, he's basically used the interview to, first of all, remind people that Malehya took off the day after the kids went missing. Because at the point when this interview came out, that was the thing that was being heavily pushed on Facebook. And he follows through with, well, trust the RCMP, but, well, you don't have to trust me, but I'm the only one who's actually speaking out for the children. This is directly aimed at Malehya, and again, directly aimed to support the whole push for Malehya's a bad person because she left and now she's gone into hiding. So again, putting Daniel up on a pedestal, gaslighting Malehya. People just ran with this without looking at the subtleties beneath it. The fact that Malehya appears to have been driven off the property by Daniel's family. The fact that Malehya was advised that she probably shouldn't do interviews. She took that advice. Daniel took the opposite advice. Even this early on, Daniel was taking advantage of Malehya's silence to gaslight her and to push things to a point where even if had she come out and spoken at this point in time, she just would have been jumped on. She would have been a villain because Daniel was working so hard to make sure that that's the way people saw her. And the multiple fake accounts on Facebook, the anonymous accounts, the fake names like Lily, Jack, like, what, seriously? The channels like Joseph Morris and this criming whatever channel, all pushing the Daniel narrative.
Jack Sullivan, still missing?
Reading the words from a page he was handed at a vigil for his missing stepchildren, 6-year-old Lily and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan, Daniel Martel says it brought out a lot of emotions.
They had some RCMP speakers and people from the community, and there was even one guy who drove all the way from Sheet Harbor to come up and show his respect. So
Again, we have the push here that Daniel's the one who went to the vigil. He's the hero here because he went to the vigil, and of course they make a point of saying that Malehya didn't go. And he points out that someone had gone all the way from Sheet Harbour. Now, do you think that's something that he would really care about? No, that was intentional. That was there. He said that to point out that, hey, this person came all the way from Sheet Harbour. But Malehya couldn't come. She couldn't be bothered spending the time to come to this vigil. Again, people ran with it. Look, Daniel must be innocent. He went to the vigil. Malehya didn't. She's a bad person. Well, if I was Malehya with the gaslighting that was already going on at that point in time, especially on Facebook, I wouldn't have either. And if there was ill will between her and Daniel and his family, then of course she's not going to go to a location where he might be. But people totally ignored that, and again, they took the bait hook, line and sinker. Look at Daniel the hero. Daniel who's doing his own PR. That's all this is. These interviews, especially doing an interview straight after the vigil to make sure that people know that he went and Malehya didn't. This is all about PR for Daniel.
The children's mother didn't attend the vigil. Martel says the grief has been overwhelming and online speculation hasn't helped, especially for their daughter that still lives with her.
put your focus outward around Malehya and toward the kids. Don't attack Malehya, because her mental health is, it's going to be reflected on her daughter. So I don't want anyone attacking Malehya anymore.
This wasn't him coming out in defence of Malehya. This was him, first of all, reminding people that Malehya's still out there and he doesn't want them attacking her anymore. He tags on the anymore because clearly he was happy with people attacking her before that. And yet, jump forward a few more weeks and now we have these text messages that are supposedly from Daniel where he's saying that a bit more pressure and she'll crack. Again, people are supposed to believe that Malehya's the bad person here. But note, what he's saying here, he's not defending Malehya. He's talking about he doesn't want it to impact on their daughter. So again, he's sowing seeds here. He's giving the suggestion that Malehya's mental health might not be so great. And he is giving the suggestion that it's putting his daughter at risk. It's subtle, but it is a very manipulative way of making people believe that Malehya is a little bit unstable and that his daughter is in a situation where she is with an unstable woman. The extension of that, of course, is that if she's unstable, well, clearly she must be the one, given that she's hiding, given that she's unstable, she must be the villain here in the story. And of course, at the same time, it's making Daniel look like a hero because he's standing up and saying, well, don't go after Malehya anymore. But people don't look at the motivation behind what he's saying. People don't look at the way he's saying it to manipulate people's opinions. This was still 100% aimed at making Malehya look bad while making Daniel look like the hero.
Jack and Lily's stepfather says he was the first to volunteer for a polygraph, hopeful it would help the search and ease public speculation.
I know it would be a big help in the case and kind of narrow down maybe some of the speculations and just provide more evidence.
Again, we have a story coming straight out of Daniel's mouth. We don't know if it's truthful, but here, again, it is all about making him look like the hero, making Malehya look like the bad person. It's not just about him saying he volunteered to do it, he came forward, but it's also, he specifically says it will narrow down some of the speculations. Well, given the speculation was about him and Malehya, what he's basically suggesting to people here is that because he's volunteered to do this polygraph test, that should narrow down the speculation to focusing on Malehya. He's using his words very carefully here to manipulate the audience. The intention here is, once again, to point out Daniel's the good guy, Malehya's the bad person. People were still buying this hook, line and sinker, and the longer this went on, the more people have continued to attack Malehya based solely on what Daniel was saying, based solely on unfounded rumours from anonymous people on Facebook, from people with names like Lily Jack, and from some guy who can't even give his real name, claims to be a cousin, but doesn't even live anywhere near the rest of her family.
He says both his cell phone and that of his estranged wife were confiscated and searched by investigators.
I just played that clip to point out that he had at one stage said that his and Malehya's phones were seized. And he said that because clearly at the time he was trying to give the impression of, once again, Malehya being the villain. He forgot, and this is one of two times that I've spotted at least, where in an effort to gaslight Malehya, in an effort to make Malehya look bad, he's actually kind of damaged his own little campaign for himself, because by having to say that they seized Malehya's phone, he added in that they seized his phone as well, which basically proves he's a liar for starters, but also kind of tarnishes his halo just a little bit.
And for their stepfather, the silence inside the once busy home is deafening.
Going from a family of 7 to just me, I mean, I have nothing but time to just think. I haven't even got to see my own kids. Not even Meadow yet. But I'm still hopeful. I have supervised visits coming up that are granted by CPS.
So again, he's trying to push the story of Malehya being the bad person. She won't let him see Meadow. But he shoots himself in the foot when he says that he has supervised visits coming up through CPS. he shoots himself in the foot several ways, because at this point in time, the story had been pushed out there thanks to his wording in interviews that Meadow had been taken by CPS and was in foster care, so he blew that out of the water completely. But not only that, this also blows out of the water the whole story of Malehya doing a runner with Meadow. And like I said, this is when that story screeched to a halt, and they just kept pushing the other side of it, that the children had been pushed into a car and were being hidden. So what you are seeing is when Daniel slips up with his interviews, the narrative is being changed to compensate for that. And people still believe it.
Did you feel in the beginning that they suspected you?
Of course. The stepfather was always a prime suspect right off the beginning.
You felt that from the beginning?
Yeah.
But you don't feel that now?
No, I don't feel that at all. I asked for the lie detector exam, the polygraph exam. I gave them my phone. I told them do drug tests, because there's a lot of rumors online about a drug party.
I just showed you that part to point out that basically after him saying in an earlier interview that they had confiscated his phone, now he's saying he volunteered to do the polygraph test, he volunteered his phone over, he volunteered to do a drug test. Well, if he's lied about the phone, he's probably lied about the other things too. His comments here are once again twisting the truth to make himself look like the hero. And yet people are still pushing this part of the narrative out there. Look at Daniel, he's good because he handed over his phone. He volunteered to do a polygraph test. He couldn't possibly have been involved with this. Again, people have forgotten the fact that at the very beginning of all this, him and Malehya concocted their story together.
Do you know if Malehya has taken one?
I don't know if I can say it, but I will anyway. Yes, she did take one.
Okay, she took one. Do you know the result?
No. RCMP wouldn't let tell me I asked.
Aside from his almost glee at Malehya doing a polygraph test, people who are still shouting out Daniel's innocence from the rooftops seem to forget that why would he need to ask if Malehya passed her polygraph test unless he was concerned about whether or not she might do so? Meaning that he has knowledge that makes him feel concerned that she may not pass the polygraph test. And yet clearly he's not given that knowledge to detectives. If he thinks she is guilty, he's not shared that knowledge with detectives. But to me, him being concerned about whether or not she's passed a polygraph test is more to do with whether or not she has actually landed him in hot water. He's concerned about what she may have said because, like I said, they both created that narrative at the very start of all this. So if she said anything that incriminates herself, it's going to incriminate him too. Likewise, he knows he's not innocent in this. Because, well, we know he's not innocent in this because, like I said, the joint narrative. So he's concerned that she may have dumped him in it. But again, the Daniel supporters have ignored this completely and continued to push the Daniel is a hero line. In fact, I saw someone argue the fact that he knew all along about what happened with her putting the children in the car and he's been protecting her. No, he's not been protecting her. Why would he be protecting her when all he's done is gaslight her? since the day she left the property?
Well, when you're going from daily to tapering off every 5 days, I mean, I already gave them everything on my phone. I'm the one who originally said, here, take my phone. We'll go through all my banking information. We'll go through all my stuff on my GPS from Google.
And you were offering all that up right
Yeah,
from the
I offered
beginning.
everything.
Again, we have Daniel playing the virtuous hero. He offered everything up. Even though we have in another interview him admitting that the phones were confiscated. But in this interview, he makes sure that he's saying he offered everything up. This has the purpose of, first of all, making people believe Daniel's the hero, but also, in his mind, making sure that people understand that he's the one cooperating, not Malehya. And that is what you see all these Facebook accounts pushing. Daniel's the hero. He offered up all these things. Malehya didn't. That makes her the bad person. Again, like I said at the start of this video, I'm not coming out here to defend Malehya. She knows what happened to those children. If one of these people is involved, then both are involved. Whether one person is more culpable than the other, we are yet to know. But this notion that Daniel is some kind of hero that is being pushed out there on Facebook, that is being pushed out there on various channels, while the flip side is being pushed that Malehya is the person solely responsible for the disappearance of these children. She is the evil person. She is the one that needs to be tarred and feathered. People need to go back to the start and have a look at the very beginning when Malehya and Daniel created a story together. A story that they gave to the public, a story that they gave to investigators. They both know what happened to these children. They were both involved. But presuming that Malehya is the villain in all this and going after her, well, what is that achieving? It's certainly not helping to find Jack and Lily. And if the pair of them were involved and Malehya does something to herself so she's not around when it comes time to getting justice for these children, well, that's going to make it harder to achieve justice. And just what if, when you listen to Belinda Gray talk about Malehya changing after she was with Daniel, what if the main perpetrator here is Daniel? And Malehya's main sin is that she was too scared to stand up to him and say, don't do that. And yet she's the one being hounded by the public. Because when I see the amount of gaslighting that's going on from Daniel and from people connected to Daniel, gaslighting of Malehya, when I see her silence, which is so loud to me, when I hear the children's grandmother say things changed after Malehya was with Daniel, to me that screams narcissistic control. That screams a situation where she could well be a victim in all this, where she has been cut off from family members by Daniel, where the children have been cut off from their family by Daniel, and Malehya has been isolated on a property with Daniel and his family where she has been put in a position where she's had no power. And this is what has led to whatever happened to the children. Because everything I'm seeing here leads me to think that could well be the case. We don't know what the situation is. So we really shouldn't be buying into all this hearsay information that is aimed at vilifying Malehya and raising Daniel onto a pedestal. We need to stay focused on what we know directly from the Mounties. When we hear Daniel's interviews, we know he lies. I've shown you that in this video. We can take those things on board, but we need to recognise that in those interviews, his goal is not to find Jack and Lily. His goal is to basically be his own PR and make himself look innocent while gaslighting Malehya at the same time. So we need to take everything he says with a grain of salt. And as for all these added characters that have come out of the woodwork, we need to ignore them. We don't know who they truly are. We have no solid evidence of their connections. We have no idea of whether or not they've been put up to it by Daniel and his family. And this with Logan, well, she's Daniel's cousin. Of course she's going to come out in his defence. So I think going forward, we need to keep our eyes wide open. We need to keep our analytical brains working. We need to think critically of the information that is being given to us. We need to apply a little bit of logic to that information and question, is this another story that is designed to make Daniel look like the hero and Malehya look like the villain? And if that is the case, question where this story is coming from. Because like I said at the start of the video, both these individuals are responsible for whatever happened to these children. So this whole Daniel is a hero thing, people need to look at it a little bit more closely and realise they are being manipulated. Now, this video has ended up being a lot longer than I expected it to be. If you have hung on and listened right through, thank you for doing so. I definitely appreciate your support. So I'm going to finish here. Hopefully this does give people a reason to stop and think critically, think logically, and also to be a bit more aware of the fact that you are being manipulated by various channels. You are being manipulated if you are on Facebook and reading these stories. And heck, if you are watching Joseph Morris, you are definitely being manipulated. So I'm going to leave it there. On that note, thank you for watching. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit that like button because YouTube loves that and it gets these videos out into the algorithm. And of course, please leave a comment below. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.